The doorway opened just a crack, and I knew I was no longer standing on the edge of this story. I moved toward the chair beside his bed, placed the USB on my lap, and waited for him to wake up, not to ease my mind, but to know what exactly he thought he was hiding. I hadn't even managed to sit down when Daniel motioned for me to step outside. He didn't raise his voice, but his eyes were enough for me to understand that whatever he was about to say shouldn't be spoken in front of Mira, or anyone else in that room. I followed him into the hallway. The door closed softly behind us, leaving inside the steady beeping of monitors like they were masking something. The hospital lights washed over my already tired eyes, making everything feel brighter than it should. I leaned lightly against the wall, one hand supporting my belly, the other half curled around the USB that had been placed in my palm only minutes earlier. Daniel stopped beside the small window overlooking the parking lot. Outside, the snow kept falling, tiny white flakes spinning under the yellow lights of the lot, looking peaceful, completely at odds with what was happening inside my head. He didn't look at me right away. Instead, he watched the gray winter sky for a long moment, as if deciding where to start. And I realized this wasn't empty silence. This wasn't empty silence. This was the silence of someone who knew that once he spoke, nothing could ever go back to the way it was. Finally, Daniel said, "Landon has been contacting me these past 2 weeks." I felt my hand tighten around the USB so hard the metal dug painfully into my skin. My voice came out so quietly I barely recognized it. "Contacting you? About what?" Daniel finally turned to look at me. His eyes held no uncertainty, no comforting softness. They were the eyes of someone who had seen more than he wanted to say aloud. "He knew something," Daniel said, each word landing on the floor with deliberate weight, "but he didn't dare tell anyone else." "Why? You?" I asked, unable to hide my confusion. Daniel didn't avoid the question. He crossed his arms, his expression tightening as if recalling the past few days. "Landon and I," he said, "aren't close friends, but we've worked together a few times on the residence council, building maintenance issues, repair funds, those bits of brick. A brack everyone else ignores. But Landon actually pays attention to. He always notices what others overlook." I swallowed against the tightness climbing up my throat. "So, what did he discover? What did he discover?" "You could say." He paused, choosing his words. "There's money in our building that isn't going where it's supposed to go." "You mean fraud?" Daniel shrugged, the gesture looking like someone who didn't want to believe it but had no choice because all the evidence pointed one way. "I don't have enough data to use that word." "But Landon does," he said. "He sent me a few files. At first I thought they were technical reports. Then I realized they were a string of altered documents." I felt like another layer of fog in my mind had just lifted. This wasn't infidelity. Not a caught-in-the-act story. Not something trivial like I had assumed when I saw Mira's name on the emergency form. This was entirely different. Daniel continued. "He told me someone on the building's management board was trying to hide transferred funds. A small amount, not huge, but consistent. At first I thought it was a system error, but Landon," he stopped, his voice dropping. "Landon believed someone didn't want him to know the truth." I gripped the window frame to steady myself. "You mean someone threatened him?" He looked at me. A look that was answer enough. I asked again, this time with more certainty. "Did Landon ever tell you this? Had anything to do with Mira?" Daniel shook his head slowly. "No. He only said Mira accidentally saw something she shouldn't have. When she was taking pictures in the parking lot." "What did she tell you?" "Not much, Dan. Just enough for me to know that Mira being in Landon's car tonight isn't what either of you think." My chest tightened. A flicker of relief surfaced only to be immediately overtaken by something else, fear. If it wasn't an affair, then what brought them together in the same car tonight? "He was going to show me that USB," Daniel added, his eyes shifting toward my hand, "but he never got the chance. Landon said only if something happened. I should give it to you." "Something," I repeated. "You mean? What kind of something?" "Tonight's crash wasn't an accident." "I can't confirm that," Daniel said. But he called me 3 days ago, sounding terrified. Landon said someone was watching the parking lot. Someone got into the elevator on our floor at midnight. And Daniel stopped. And I urged. He said if suddenly anything happened, then under no circumstances should you be left alone in that apartment. On the bench across from us, an older couple was waiting for news about their son after surgery. They sat far from me, knowing nothing about what was unfolding, yet their worried eyes fixed on the hallway as if searching for a sliver of hope. That strangely peaceful scene overwhelmed me even more. Everything outside was still happening normally, while my world was being distorted inch by inch. I tightened my grip on the USB. "Does Mira know?" I asked. "She knows part of it," Daniel answered, "not the whole thing." "And you?" I asked quietly, studying him. Daniel looked at me. And for the first time that night, I saw exhaustion carved into his eyes. "I know enough to understand that what just happened isn't simple." A hospital announcement came through the speakers, unnervingly cheerful in the heavy atmosphere. "Dr. Harper, please report to Emergency Station 4. Daniel looked through the glass pane into the room. Seeing Mira wiping her face, trying to steady herself, he turned back to me. "You need to talk to Landon. As soon as he wakes up." I forced my breath to slow. Daniel held my gaze for one more second, as if weighing something, then he said, "That USB. Rose, don't open it here. At home, no. Wait until someone is with you." I didn't know if I fully understood, but part of me knew. This warning wasn't unnecessary. Daniel walked back into the room to be with Mira, leaving me alone in the too bright hospital hallway. I looked toward the parking lot, where snow still fell steadily under the yellow lights. Everything so quiet it felt like no danger could possibly exist outside. I returned to Landon's room, stepping into the scent of antiseptic and the cold light. The doctor had just left. The monitor beside the bed signaled a small shift. Landon's fingers had begun to move. I pulled the chair closer, placed the USB on my lap, and clasped my hands together to stay composed. Not out of fear of facing a husband who might have been unfaithful, but because I didn't know what the first words out of his mouth would be when he woke. I sat at the edge of the bed, holding my breath in my chest as if taking too strong a breath might plunge the whole room into chaos. The doctor had been gone less than a minute, when Landon stirred. A thin groan slipped from his throat, so faint. Yet in that moment, it felt like it tore through the silence of the room. "Landon." I leaned down, afraid to touch him. Afraid to break something even more fragile than the brace on his arm. His eyelid twitched. On his arm. His eyelid twitched, then opened little by little, as if his eyes were fighting between sleep and consciousness. When the hospital lights reached his gaze, I watched clarity return in layers quickly. He didn't ask why I was there, didn't ask what had happened. The first, only thing Landon said was, "Rose, don't go back to the apartment. Don't go home." His voice was hoarse, like sand lodged in his throat, but each word was sharp, clear, trembling enough to make my scalp prickle. I stepped back half a pace, both to catch my breath and to look into his eyes more clearly. "Why?" I asked softly. He turned his head, tried to push himself up, but the pain forced him back down. "Don't, absolutely don't go there. Someone. Landon." Before he could answer, Mira's faint voice drifted from the other bed. She was lying on her side toward us, half her face hidden under her bandaged arm. She didn't look at me. Didn't look at Landon, only at some empty corner of the room. "They tried to kill him," Mira whispered. "Not because of me." The words dropped into the room like a heavy piece of metal. For a few seconds, I thought I had misheard. But Mira's trembling hand said she wasn't confusing physical pain with the truth. Landon closed his eyes for a moment, as if Mira had spoken aloud the thing he hadn't wanted to say in front of me. 1 second, 2 seconds. Then he opened them again. Just as Mira turned toward the wall, curling into herself as if wishing to disappear. I stood up straight, my fingers subconsciously reaching into my coat pocket.